Hi everyone, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Today we're going to talk about paper. The question that's often asked is there really a difference in the papers that we want to use when we're making our cards? And the answer is yes and no. I'll explain that. It's all very confusing. The first thing that people usually will ask is, what is Yupo paper? Yupo paper is a plastic feeling paper. It is one that doesn't absorb water. See if I don't know that there's a way to explain the way it feels other than for you to feel it. It's very, very smooth, but it does not absorb water or inks or that type of thing. What it does is that when you use something on top of this paper, it actually floats on top. This is why Yupo paper is used for alcohol inks. Because with alcohol inks, you do not want your alcohol inks to actually absorb into the paper. You want them to flow across the surface. So Yupo paper is generally only used for alcohol inks or a substance or product that you do not want to be absorbed into the paper, because this is almost like a plastic paper. We have plain old ordinary everyday copy paper. You do not want to use copy paper in creating your crafts. This is a very thin, very lightweight paper. It's only 20 pounds. If you spray water on this, it's going to disintegrate. It's not going to give you any smoothness when you're doing blending. It will actually show through or bleed through on the back. So, copy paper is not a good paper to use when you're doing your crafting. So what do we use? Well, there are a good number of things that you can use. But the most common that you will see is a paper made specifically for crafting and making cards. It's generally 140 pound paper, usually 130 to 140 pound paper. These two brands, the Lavinia Multifarious Smooth and Supreme, is 140 pound weight, as well as the Holtz Distress White Heavystock. Now, a lot of people say, well, what's so special about these papers? These papers have actually been designed to absorb and blend your inks very well, very smoothly. They have a very, very smooth surface. When you touch them, they're very, almost, soft may not be the right word, but it is. They're soft. There's no texture to them whatsoever. They're also fairly good thickness. With the 140 pound weight cardstock, this gives you a nice, sturdy, thick piece of cardstock that's not going to dissolve if you get it wet or disintegrate or tear apart easily. When you're using it and get it wet, yes, you will have a little bit of bowing with it when it's wet, which means that it will bow up when it's wet to look something like this. But it will always smooth out and straighten back out. So when you come to looking at the Holtz Distress Heavystock cardstock and the Lavinia Multifarious, the reason that these are good are because they are designed specifically to handle your inks and to get wet. Generally, they may cost a little bit more, but your results are going to be very crisp, very clean. They usually have a very, very white, bright surface to work from, so it makes your colors of your inks stand out really pretty and bright. With the Distress Holtz, I especially use this one when I'm wanting to use my distress sprays, because it holds up very well to those. This is just a little example of one that I did where I sprayed my Distress Oxide sprays on it and lots of water. And it did bow up, but as you can see, I got it to be very straight and smooth, so when I apply it to my card, after I make my design, it's going to be nice and smooth and flat. So as you can see, this is a good product to use. Now, I bought this one at Hobby Lobby. It was $10. You get 10 sheets, so it's $1 a sheet. Now, I usually cut mine in quarters, and so I get a little more value out of it because I do a little bit smaller projects. Anyway, so that kind of tells you what the name brand products are. They are made specifically for your inks and can handle water. Now, is this your only option? No, not necessarily. I have in the past used an Art Mixed Media cardstock. This one has a little bit lighter weight. This one is 117 pounds. But I like this one, and as you'll notice, it says vellum surface. I don't know if you can see that very well. That just means that it's smooth. So this paper is a good one to use as well. Usually I use this one when I'm only using minimal water. You get very nice smooth blending with this paper. And the weight is really good. Not quite as heavy as the Lavinia or the Tim Holtz, but it still is a good weight paper to use. You can get this in different brands. Also, you can get it in different weights and smoothness or textures. So just when you go out looking, look and feel. Open up the books, look at it, feel it, see what you think of it. So your next possibilities are watercolor paper. I have used two different kinds of watercolor paper. The first one is, this one is a 90-pound weight. It has a texture to it, and I don't know that there's any way to get the camera to pick up on the texture of this. But a textured watercolor paper basically looks like it has little bumps all over it, and you can actually feel it. It's not a smooth paper. This is great when you're doing lots of water. And if you don't mind having the texture in the background of your project, it actually can create a very cool look with a texture. A second type of watercolor paper that I have used is actually smoother. This one is a 140-pound paper, but it does not have any texture to it. So with this, it's very thick. It's actually thicker, believe it or not, than the textured one, but they feel totally different. This one is a little bit thinner than this one, which is 140 pound. Now, this watercolor paper isn't quite as bright a white as the Tim Holtz or the Lavinia. Here's actually a piece that I've cut out, and I don't know if you can see that. This one is a bright white, whereas my watercolor paper, even though it's a white, it looks creamier. And I don't know that the light's actually going to show you that very well. So this paper works very well as well. It's just not quite as smooth because, once again, it is designed to have lots of water used with it, so it can absorb the water a little bit better. I will do some demonstrations and kind of show you what a few pieces look like doing the same thing on the different types of paper. The thing is that you might not really notice too much of a difference. So you need to work on a paper that you like. You may have to experiment around. I have, like I said, I bought this paper, the regular watercolor paper, the mixed media paper, the Tim Holtz Distress paper, the Lavinia paper. So all of these I have used, and they have all worked out well for me. So go and experiment around, try different papers. Again, remember that the heavy paper, 140 pound, 130 pound, is going to be a thicker cardstock and would possibly handle a little more use and ink and water on it. If you don't use as much water, you might be able to go ahead and buy a paper like this. I actually use this one quite often, especially when I'm experimenting around, when I don't know what I might want to do with the project. Then if I know that I'm going to be using a lot of, say, the oxide inks or a lot of water, maybe with my brushos, I feel like I would want to have a lot more sturdy paper because I'm going to be using a lot of water. I might go ahead and go with this or with my Lavinia. Again, if you like the look of a texture, then a textured watercolor paper is great. Basically, I guess what it comes down to is find the paper that you like. There is a difference. The heavier paper does stand up a little bit better to your work. The papers that are specifically designed for inks and water-based products also are good and hold up much better when you're using those types of materials. So I hope this helps a little bit with what the different types of paper are that are out there. But I can't tell you specifically which one to use, but this hopefully will give you a guideline as to what is available, and you can go out there and play around with them and find the one that you like to use the most. So let's see what different things can be made with different papers. So here I have 4 different types of paper. Really, just looking at them, you really can't tell that much, can you? Nope, I can't. But when I pick them up and feel of them, then I can feel a difference. I can feel how thick or thin they are, how smooth the surface is, or if there's a texture to it. So we're going to go ahead and start and see what we can do with these papers. So this will be the first one that I'm going to do. So I'm just going to take some distressed ink, regular distressed ink, and we're just going to lightly go over the surface. Now with this one, I am finding that my blender is kind of dragging as I go across it. It's not a real smooth paper. And you might not be able to see it on the camera, but when I look at it, I can see the texture. The reason that is that this is the Watercolor Textured 90 pound. So this is the lightest paper that I've got. Very flexible. But the thing is with this is that I can still get it wet. It's still going to be okay. It will still have the same effects. But it just gives a slight different look to it because the water paper is going to react differently with the inks and with the water. And I know these demonstrations are going to be hard to see on camera, but I just kind of want to show you that this one actually fades out a little bit when I put the water on it. With the watercolor paper, it gives you the ability to soften things and still have a texture that gives a little bit of interest. We can go ahead and do our inks heavier if we would like to. But we're still going to see the texture because this is not a smooth paper. And actually, most likely, as we do more ink on it, we're actually going to see more of the texture. Again, It's hard on the camera for me to be able to show you. I don't think I'm going to get this to focus in to see the texture. So most likely your textured watercolor paper is going to be the least desirable unless you're looking for that effect. Again, play with it, see what it does. So the second paper that I've got actually isn't quite as textured as the other one. So when we use our blender, we're not going to see quite as much texture. However, with this paper, we are actually going to see a little bit of, I don't know if you want to call it disintegration, but you're going to actually see a texture. It rubs on the paper and causes the paper to pill up. That's because this is also a watercolor paper. It's watercolor smooth. It's thicker. It's 140 pound. So it's much thicker than our 90-pound paper was. But because this is a watercolor paper that is designed for watercoloring, to absorb the colors and to let them be create that soft look, they're not used to having the rubbing effect of blending inks on it. And so with this type of paper, it's going to actually change the surface of the paper a little bit and cause it to peel up. Hard to say right there. Anyway, so this one, if you like that really interesting texture, would be kind of fun to use. But it is not a smooth, even though it's smoother than our actual textured watercolor paper, it still has a little bit of texture on it, and it will create a texture when you blend your inks on it. So now we've got this paper. And we will blend with that. With this particular one, you find that we do get a little bit better blending. It's smoother, the paper is smoother. So it'll do a nice job because the surface of this paper is smooth. So if you take a look at this one as compared to this one, you can see that the smoother paper does a lot better when you're trying to blend. Now with this one, you can also do water and get the interesting effects of when you dab it up. And as you can see, it bowed just a little bit when I was doing that. That's because this is a slightly thinner paper. This is the Strathmore Mixed Media 117 pound. Now, like I said, this is one that I use quite a bit and I like it. It gives the nice smooth blending. It works well with any of the water products or water type things that I'd like to do on it. So this is a paper that I like to use. Our final paper that we are demonstrating on today has a very, very smooth texture surface. This one gives you a very bright contrast. The paper stock is much thicker than was with this one. This one also will hold up to blending very well. Because it is 140-pound stock, you're going to find that it's much sturdier than lighter weight papers. You can also still do any of the water effects that you would like to do. And as you can see, this one, we will let it sit for just a little bit longer, has a slightly more muted effect with the water, because this is a paper that is designed to withstand and hold up the best. This is the Tim Holtz white heavy cardstock, so it's 140 pounds, and it is designed to hold up really well. Now, are any of these papers bad papers to use? The answer is no. Any of these will work just fine for you. It just depends upon what are you wanting in the long run and what is your budget. Again, when I did my distress sprays, I used the Tim Holtz heavy cardstock paper, namely because it can hold up to a lot of moisture. So I hope that this has helped a little bit with showing you the difference between the papers. Again, go out there, experiment around, see what paper you are happiest with. There are so many out there. Just know that some will do better than others. Some will give you different effects, and actually that's fine. If you want a different effect, great. Use that paper. It's your choice. It's your art. Make it beautiful your way. Have a great day.